So good afternoon, everyone. This paper is in three parts. Firstly, I will give an overview of the representation of Arran in the collection of the National Galleries of Scotland. Secondly, I will focus on 4 early 20th century responses to the island's landscape via a work each by D.Y. Cameron, E.A. Taylor, Stanley Curseta and Ian Chain. And finally, I will briefly mention the women artists in the collection who were active in the 20th century and had a connection with Arran. Arran has a strong presence in the Scottish National Collection. It is the subject of some 72 paintings, works on paper and photographs, which date from the 18th to the 21st century. We have 2 paintings of the island, which you can see here, both by James Lawton Wingate, Sundown Aaron, of which we will hear more later, and Harveston Aaron. The island features in 24 works on paper by 15 artists, from D.Y. Cameron to Hugh William Williams, via John Clark, Robert Herdman, William McTaggart, and Alexander Naismith, amongst others. Their subject matter is primarily the island's landscape and weather, with a focus on its hills, extensive views, solitary cottages nestled in their natural environment, and Arran viewed from afar, including from Bute and the Ayrshire coast. These 2 beautiful drawings on the left by Moses Griffith are in pen, ink and grey wash on paper and depict Loughranza Castle and Brodick Castle in fine detail. In contrast, at the upper right, James Corr's Arran Peaks is a loose and expressive study in pastel. Arran features in some 46 photographs in the collection by artists from Thomas Annan to John Muirwood via James Beckett and Bruce MacLean. There are bodies of work by Edith Judith Hart from about 1935 and by James Valentine, George Washington Wilson and John Muirwood from the 19th century. Their subject matter ranges from the island's bays, glens, villages, waterways, geology, coastlines, wildlife, and passengers and crews on ferries travelling to and from Arran. Alex Boyd will be telling us more about photography on Arran in his forthcoming paper, so I won't say anything further myself, except to draw your attention to these 2, the most recent works set on Arran in the collection. They are 2 photographs by the Belgian artist Eva Vermandel, Dear Isle of Arran on the left, and Trailer Lamlash, both of 2009 and from her Splinter series. I would now like to focus on those 4 depictions of Arran in the National Collection by Cameron, Taylor, Curseta and Chain. This quartet covers a range of subjects, techniques and styles, allowing us to enjoy different aspects of the island, combined with a glimpse into Scottish art history from just before World War I to just after World War II. This dry point and etching on paper is Arran Peaks of about 1912 by D.Y. Cameron, which was purchased in 1981. Cameron was born in Glasgow in 1865 and trained at Glasgow School of Art and the Royal Scottish Academy Life School in Edinburgh. His illustrious career saw his work exhibited internationally and his election to various prestigious institutions, including the Royal Scottish Academy and the Royal Academy. Cameron was knighted in 1924 and in 1933 was appointed King's Painter and Limner in Scotland. Cameron's multiple visits to and love of Arran are well known. My print room curator colleague Charlotte Topsfield has explained about this work. D.Y. Cameron had been visiting Arran ever since he was a child, as the Cameron family took their summer holiday there, and the landscape remained a favourite subject for both prints and painting. Arran Peaks dates from 1912 to 1913. It is a dry point, quite substantial in size. The plate size is 25 by 35.2 centimetres and was shown at the Royal Academy in London in 1912. Arran Peaks is quite an austere print. The emphasis is on the sublime and bleak grandeur of the landscape and geology. I would say, in contrast to his more romantic landscape etchings, which tend to have a richer tone. Alex Boyd has kindly suggested that Cameron is likely to have drawn this on Gleshant Hill, looking towards Ben Nevis and Ben Tarswin. I do apologise for my pronunciation, by the way. And thanks to Twitter, Robin Campbell has suggested that this shows Ben a Kiliabran with an exaggerated view across Cor a Bradham. I've murdered those names, I'm so sorry. The perspective of this work is unusual, given its subject. The low horizon does the opposite of dramatising the height of the titular peaks. Indeed, it results in the upper 2/3 of the work being left virtually blank. This, however, gives a sense of the great distance contained within the view. Cameron made Arran Peaks at the height of the Scottish etching revival, which ran from approximately the 1890s to the late 1920s, and of which he was a recognised master printmaker. He served as a trustee of the National Galleries of Scotland for 25 years and, following his death in 1945, bequeathed his own important collection of Rembrandt etchings to us. I would now like to look at Arran Cottages No. 1 of 1926 to 1932 by Ernest Archibald Taylor, about whom James McNaught talked to us, which has been on long loan to the National Galleries of Scotland since 2015. Taylor was born in Greenock in 1874 and trained at Glasgow School of Art, where he met the artist and designer Jessie M. King. They married in 1908. Following a period spent in Salford, the couple moved to Paris, where they lived between 1910 and 1914, where, as James explained, they established the Schilling Atelier, a studio gallery which ran until the outbreak of World War I. Excuse me. They thereafter settled in Kirkcudbright, but for decades spent the summers on Arran, teaching a sketching class, about which we'll hear more in a moment. Taylor worked in oils, watercolour and as a printmaker, but was also a successful designer, particularly of furniture. He participated in multiple group exhibitions, including those of the Royal Academy and the Royal Scottish Academy. With his wife and others, Taylor was a co-founder of the Dumfries and Galloway Art Society in 1922, which is still running today. I am once more indebted to Charlotte Topsfield for the information she has provided about this work. The Arran Cottages print is a soft ground etching dating from about 1926 to 32. Taylor produced other related prints. There are other numbered views of cottages of Arran, presumably intended as a series. The Hunterian Art Gallery hold the preparatory charcoal drawing for this print, as well as quite a few other Arran prints, drawings and watercolours by Taylor. And once more, Alex Boyd has identified the location depicted as High Corrie, a small clachan on the east side of Arran above Corrie. In this work, a generous foreground leads to the cluster of buildings which are represented as much a part of the landscape as the surrounding trees and hillocks. Taylor's blunt gestural technique adds rhythm to an informal image, presumably sketched at some speed on the spot before translation into an etching. In 1913, Taylor wrote an article published in the Studio called "The Isle of Arran as a Sketching Ground," in which he singles out High Corrie. From an artist's point of view, few places on the island can quite compare with Sannox and Corrie's little village of whitewashed houses, nestling over and at the foot of the hills between Lochranza and Brodick. On the hill, less than a mile from the ferry, lies the little village of South High Corrie, with its scattered sheilings, where one may find peaceful shelter, and awake with the bleat of the moorland sheep and the sound of the nimble patter of the red deer. From here, one need not go far afield to sketch. The open door reveals a new world across the changing waters, and behind the white face of the white water burn is the pathway to Goatfell, towering above the Devil's Punch Bowl and the mysterious, ever-changing Glen Sannox peaks. I am indebted to Philippa Douglas for finding a digitised version of this article whilst libraries and archives are closed. We now move on to Sundown Aaron, made by Stanley Curseta whilst he was director of the National Galleries of Scotland between 1930 and 1948. It was purchased for the collection in 1991. Curseta was born in Kirkwall, Orkney, and trained at Edinburgh College of Art. A promising early career was interrupted by service in World War I, after which he established a reputation for painting elegant interiors, portraits, and seascapes. In 1925, Curseta was appointed keeper of the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, rising to become director of it and the Scottish National Gallery in 1930. The Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art was not founded until 1960, despite Curseta's huge efforts to open one in the 1930s. On his retirement in 1948, he moved back to Orkney and devoted himself once more to his own practice. Sundown Aaron comes from a series of some 300 watercolour and pencil sketches which Curseta made of works in the National Collection when planning their display. It is an extraordinary body of work by an artist of small-scale, shorthand studies of many of the most important paintings under his curatorial care. We can see many of them gathered in the mocked-up installation plan in this slide. Thus, Curseta's Arran work is actually a copy of Sundown Aaron, painted by 1901 by James Lawton Wingate. This was bequeathed to the Scottish National Gallery in 1920 by Dr. John Kirkhope. Wingate was born in Kelvinhof in 1846 and trained in Glasgow and Edinburgh. He began exhibiting at the Royal Scottish Academy at the age of 19. Such was his eventual professional success that he was elected its president in 1919, a post he held until shortly before his death in 1924. Wingate's romantic view of Arran centres on a tree silhouetted against a glowing sunset and a child driving a cow and calf along a track which runs diagonally along the lower part of the canvas. The rich layering of paint throughout adds to the sense of a rural idyll. Alex came to my aid once again and explained that it's likely this depicts a scene in the Macquarie area in the southwest of Arran. He thinks the outline over the water is probably the entire peninsula across Kilbrannan Sound. Thank you, Alex. In contrast, Curseta's version of the image deftly picks out the main elements of Wingate's composition in areas of watercolour, sets it within a wonderfully curly rendition of its frame, and labels it with abbreviated references to its title and artist. I do not know if the 1924 towards the upper right relates to the date Curseta thought the painting was made, the year of the artist's death, or perhaps to an earlier accession number. And Curseta's work measures just 6.2 by 6.6 centimetres, so the real work is smaller than the image that I and others are seeing on a laptop screen. The final work in our quartet is Arran Landscape of 1946 by Ian Chain, which was purchased in 1949, possibly from the estate of the artist Ernest Stephen Lumsden. Chain was born in Broughty Ferry in 1895 and trained at Glasgow School of Art. As printmaking was not part of the fine arts syllabus, which covered drawing and painting, he taught himself Japanese woodcut techniques and began to produce distinctive colour woodcuts in the 1920s. During this period, he became treasurer of the Society of Artist Printers, which was established in Glasgow in 1921. Chain exhibited at the Royal Glasgow Institute from 1918 and at the Royal Scottish Academy from 1920, and continued to do so at both until his death in 1955. As seen in the dramatic Arran Landscape, Chain combined an interest in Japanese woodcuts with knowledge of the work of the French artist Jean-Émile Lebereau and a distinctive Art Deco accent. Typically, he made his prints in editions of 20 or fewer, and only 8 are recorded of this work. It is one of the first woodcuts he made after World War II in January 1946, but it is also one of the last he ever made, as he concentrated on painting after 1947. I am yet again indebted to Alex, who thinks the location depicted is most likely a view towards the mountain of Sear Moor down Glen Sannox. And again, thanks to Twitter, Rowan Payton said the view is looking up Sannox Glen with the punch bowl on the left and Dylan Nardini said it is looking down Glen Sannox from North Sannox. I'm sure this will all make a lot of sense to people who really know Arran. Shane plays with scale from the tiny sheep in the foreground to the majestic hills and mountains, which progress away from them into the distance. A terrific sense of movement is provided by the rippling of trees and outlining of geological structure, which goes from gentle grass-covered surfaces to raw, steep ascents. A lone tree set almost in the middle of the composition is echoed on a grander scale in the peak which dominates the background, above which a sinister sky belies the sunshine over the fertile plains at its base. I now come to an overview of the seven women artists active in the 20th century who have so far been identified with a connection to Arran and who are represented in the National Collection, albeit with a work or works which do not depict the island. As you will see in this slide, and I'm sorry the images and text are so small, they are, on the top row from left to right, Joan Eardley, Hannah Frank, Jessie M. King, and Bet Lowe. And on the bottom row from left to right, Agnes Miller Parker, Cordelia Oliver, and Margot Sanderman. Information and images about all the works I have discussed today can be found on the National Galleries of Scotland's website. In conclusion, I hope I have managed to provide an understanding of the representation of Arran in the National Collection. And I am indebted to Alex Boyd, Philippa Douglas, Kirsty Meehan, and Charlotte Topsfield for their help with my research. I feel it is fair to give the last word to E.A. Taylor from his 1913 article, in which he stated, "To the artist, Arran offers an inexhaustible world. Apart from its hills that loom up grey with a questionable mystery to those on board some distant passing liner, it holds a storehouse of study in its glens and sea-bound roads. For the painter, the best months in Arran are September and October. The red deer roam the hills more numerous than at other times, fearlessly disturbing only the slumbering peace of the mountains, and their belling from corrie to glen only puts one in tune with the grandeur of a solitary place and the glory of a great creation." Thank you.